Okay, well, after a lot of grinding and frustration, this is what I ended up with. This inner bearing race is just fused to this shaft. There's just no way to get it off. I've ground it. Some places came off clean, but it's just, everything is just fused. There's just no way getting this off. And then seeing some comments from other professionals, they say the best bet is to get another shaft. So that's what I have done. Got one on order, but this is what the bearing should look like. And this is the race that goes into the input shaft. This is what's left of the race and the cage that's partially fused together. There are even some bearings that are still fused in there. That's what's left of some of the roller bearings that are in there, but that's what I had to do. So I basically took the shaft and all the gears apart off of it. That's what's left of it. So for your do-it-yourselfers, I'll go over a few things on how to make it easy to take this apart. It wasn't too bad, actually. Of course, having a press helped. I got me a Harbor Freight 20-ton press, and that did the trick. One thing I did do, I got one of these, a large bearing splitter or separator from Harbor Freight. But it seemed very thick in this area here, and when I used it to get the third and fourth synchronizer, the third and fourth gear synchronizer, by using the third gear as per the instructions, it just seemed it didn't get behind it enough. So I just grounded it down a little bit, made it a little thinner in this area here, and it seemed to really grab it pretty good. So I just used this and the press just like the instructions say to do. And just following the instructions, everything came apart pretty good. So let's check out some things I did to make this job easier. Alright, so here's how you can get the bearing off that's next to first gear without destroying it. And now this is per the instructions. Per the instructions, you're supposed to grab a hold of first gear and pry off the bearing using first gear. The first gear is floating, so it's not pressed on at all. But if you don't want to destroy that bearing there, taking it off the main shaft, you use a bearing splitter if it's big enough to grab a hold of first gear and pull everything off using first gear. Now my bearing splitter that I had isn't big enough to do that. So I had made a puller using plate steel that's 3 inches wide and I think it's about 3/16 of an inch thick. And I originally had used these to try to pull off the bearing off the input shaft, which it didn't work. It kept flexing and bending and pulling off. So to keep that from happening here, I clamped these plates to the plates that come with the press, and they almost lifted a little bit, but the bearing is pulling off. So this is how you can get this bearing off without destroying it. And one other note for the do-it-yourselfers, Now this press is a Harbor Freight 20-ton press, and I had got it because the I-beams where these 4x4s are sitting on were wide enough to get the bearing off the input shaft, but of course it's not wide enough to fit first gear through and some of the other gears on this main shaft. So I just took some 4x4s and 2x4s, and that helped provide the room I needed to get all the gears off the main shaft. So you don't necessarily have to get a very expensive press, but I still had to pay about $225 for the Harbor Freight press. But it's working fine. Alright. Okay. Here's second gear. And this synchronizer is pressed on. Now here you got a ring in there, but this is a ring that goes around that clip. So you gotta take the clip off before you get and take this here off, and it falls right off. I was trying to get this thing off and I thought this was just a spacer in between. It's not, but that just falls right off. And now we're ready to get the press to pull out that synchronizer. That's an amateur for you. Okay, so here's the end result of disassembling the main shaft. I've got everything put in order so that I know how to put it back on the shaft in the order that they came off. I finally got the bearing off of the input shaft, the main outside bearing. And then of course on the inside, that's where the bearing that got destroyed goes. So the new bearing race will go in there, and the cone bearing, this part of the bearing here, will go on the front end of the main shaft. So hopefully I will be able to put things together as easy as they came apart. So that's going to be the challenge. I have a main shaft ordered, so it should be here I think tomorrow. It costs $300, but that's something I had to do if I want to get this transmission running again. So still don't know why that bearing on the inside of the input shaft got destroyed, but hopefully it won't happen again. Alright, until the next video.